All right, what up, team? I'm finally getting this video out. I wanted to get out way sooner, but a couple things happened, point three, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, the incident. But that's all right. No reason to get into any of that. Let's talk about the problems with infusions. However, before I jump into my yip yapping, I wanted to show you guys a quick video comparison that I prepared so you guys can maybe see the difference before I get into it. Fireball, 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 this will be fireball. Firestorm, double storms, curse, living bomb, fireball, double firestorm, metal pot, tap to ignite. I'm not gonna lie to you, Jonathan, this shit sucks my fucking dick off.
Or use it with all three to generate a storm that is truly apocalyptic.
Yeah, apocalyptically fucking dog shit. This shit is whack. Curse, order storms, frost bomb, living bomb, fireball, snap to ignite, firestorm, curse. We're absolutely fucked. Boss is a monster. Do zero damage, zero damage across the board. Okay, we're absolutely fucked.
I know it's hard to remember the people we used to be. It's even harder to remember. Oh, fuck, you're right next to me. You say it's too late to make it. What is it too late to try? And all our time that you wasted, all of our bridges burned down. I've wasted my nights. You turned out the lights. Now I'm paralyzed, still stuck in that time when we called it love. But even the sun sets in paradise. I'm at a place where I'm trying to go home. All of my change I spent on you. Where the time's gone, baby, it's so long.
So, all memes aside, I actually don't think that infusions are really that bad. I don't think that Infusion Stormweaver is really that terrible, although I will admit the Stormweaver Ascensi is grotesquely dog shit just in general, but that's neither here nor there. There are infusion setups that work very well. I know there's some with Arc and Ball Lightning and that sort of thing with Cast on Crit that are extremely broken, and honestly, I don't think that this character really was that bad. I know that the campaign clip with the boss on my shorts or whatever is kind of rough, but that was in kind of the building phase of it. But after a while, you didn't see all the other campaign bosses. This character had insane single target damage in the campaign, and honestly, she still kind of slaps ass. This is a little bit different because these are pretty juiced maps, and I stopped playing the build, like I stopped giving any sort of love to it whatsoever. But overall, I actually don't think it's really that terrible. The problem is that when you side by side it with any sort of Deadeye, bow user, any sort of witch hunter, that sort of thing, it just looks terrible. And that's kind of my point, is that it's really hard to play the infusion builds after you play something like, in my case, a witch hunter. To give you guys a bit more context, I always try to compare to what I think the boss damage should be and how the fight should go. So for example, obviously I know that if you played this in campaign versus a Deadeye, this build does like 1/8 the damage of a Deadeye in campaign or whatever, because Deadeye is extremely overtuned and busted. But I don't think that the Deadeye should be the standard, or any build that's just one-shotting bosses should be the standard. I think ideally that you would have like a real legitimate engagement with the boss where you're dealing solid damage, but it's not like you just delete him and forget about his existence instantaneously. So I try to do my comparisons against how I think the boss fight ought to be, or what the damage ought to be, rather than, looking at what it is comparatively, because yeah, it's just completely out of skew as of right now. Really, my main issues with the infusion casting, or trying to do the tri-elemental infusion casting more specifically, is the speed and the button rotation that you have. Firstly, I'll talk about my issues with the rotation. I actually do not mind the rotation at all. It is 8 buttons. There's a ton of buttons you have to press, and I thoroughly enjoy pressing all those buttons. It reminds me of playing a Destro lock and WoW, doing my DPS rotation. But I think it's more of a question of, is this reasonable to expect for the normal player that wants to play PoE 2? Is this even congruent with the vision, whatever that is? Is this combo-y? Is this too combo-y? Kind of that would be the question that I would put forth here. And just as a disclaimer, this rotation might not be necessary, and I think I probably have too many moving parts in this build, but this was the general thing that I came up with. So I would start with a double living bomb to make sure I get my 2 fire infusions, drop a frost bomb for exposure effect, as well as a cold infusion, drop my orb of storms, 2 of them to get my lightning infusions going. Then I would cast some fireballs, hopefully break the living bombs to get some fire infusions. Then I would snap off the ignite from the boss to get another fire infusion, and then I would drop a triple infused firestorm with some frost walls underneath it to finish out the rest of my lightning infusions. Probably hit him with a curse, spam some fireballs, and then repeat the process over and over and over again. And again, it's not like this is hyper optimized and this is the way that it has to be. This is just kind of the method method that I found to have the highest infusion uptime for all 3 infusions. This is the rotation I ended up on, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. The reason why I'm so focused on the rotation is because I think it sets a really interesting precedent for the vision, and that's kind of what a lot of what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand the vision that they're putting forward, which of course is extremely difficult because it feels highly mixed across the board. It feels everything is like kind of one way or the other, but I'm okay with doing combos. I'm okay with pressing more buttons than I did in PoE 1, although it's kind of not true in a lot of cases. But the issue I have is that if it is the case we're going to advertise this big great thing of Firestorm and you got to try Ellie Infusion, which is really cool, but you have to do 7 to 8 buttons on average as like a rotation to get the optimal DPS output, that seems like a bit much. And don't get me wrong, I loved it. I'm happy to do it, right? If speed wasn't such a gross problem with this build, I would absolutely be ripping the shit out of this. And that brings me to the elephant in the room and the further problem of vision. If you asked me if the PoE devs had infinite time for 0.3 and they could have gotten everything done that they wanted and it could have released in the exact state that they could just snap their fingers and make it exactly how it should have been, I couldn't tell you what it would look like. I don't actually know what we're trying to accomplish anywhere. And that's fine. I understand it's early access and it's going to take a minute to figure that out, but it doesn't really seem to make a whole lot of sense across the board. And talking about speed with this build in particular is just another one of those instances. And I'll tell you right now, as a quick disclaimer, I'm down for whatever vision. Like, if we want to rip 8 buttons and be slow as fuck, all right, sure. If we just want to be a PoE 1 knockoff and just make everyone Deadeye speed and have Quicksilver Flask, all right, fine. You know, I'm down for whatever. I just am trying to understand what it's supposed to be. And I think the speed differences between characters is really like a major point of confusion in regards to this problem. When I'm playing my Infusion Stormweaver, it takes so long to do anything. You have to constantly cast 8 different spells at any given time, and you're at an ungodly movement speed reduction percentage, and there's nothing you can do about it, at least without insane investment or some traveling on the tree. Like, just out the gate, out the box, you're slow as fuck permanently. Meanwhile, they gave attack builds the most retarded item in the game ever in that stupid ass helm, and Witch Hunter is fucking Beyblading through the map. And don't even get me started on this abomination that rides on the back of a fucking bird. I can only imagine her favorite part of the Rhoda is the strong protruding spine, you gooning fuck. Look, the point is that by the time you've cleared a quarter of the map, fucking Brady over here has already Febrezed the smell off the saddle, and she's in the next map riding down another bumpy road. Once you combine the issues of speed, or rather the lack thereof, with a substantial amount of input from a fairly significant rotation, it just doesn't really feel like there's a whole lot of payoff. And I think that this is one of the fundamental issues of balance in PoE 2 currently. I like the idea of slowing combat down and having combos be more at the forefront and having more input for more output. I think that's cool, right? And I like the idea that you have to do all this stuff to get the triple fire infused Firestorm, and then the Firestorm is this big payout, although of course it's not. And I feel like the balancing tends to be somewhat antithetical to the idea of slowing things down and having more buttons and more combos. And to be fair, this is like an extreme version of it. I mean, like, this is an 8 button build. I think is probably absurd. But to also be fair, okay, we advertised the apocalyptic storm of Firestorm with triple L infusion. I thought it was gonna be sick as fuck. Okay, it just fell a little flat, and we did Jimmy rig something that worked. But overall, this was kind of just my experience with infusions in general. And there are infusion builds that work extremely well, that are extremely broken, blah blah blah, yada yada. They do exist, and they do exist on Stormweaver. I'm not going to talk too much about the specific issues with Stormweaver or my character in particular. I'm going to do that in a different video. I wanted to focus more on like casting from an infusion perspective in general and how it compares to other things. To cap things off on a good note, I do think 0.3 is a fantastic patch and a quantum leap in the right direction when you compare it to 0.2, and I really am enjoying myself. I just wanted to share some constructive feedback, or ideally constructive as I could make it, on the issues I had with this character. And as far as like a bad character experience goes, this is about as best as you could get for having a quote unquote bad character. And I still probably will come back and try to revive her a little bit down the road, but I'll be saving that for a build diary, and I will see you guys in the next video. Deuces.